With summer and the warmer weather on its way, we're sure to start seeing more of these guys as they hunt for food. And I'm sure that most of you, like me, really enjoy seeing our native wildlife. That is, of course, except for the dreaded drop bear. But no matter how much of an animal lover you are, no one wants an unexpected visit from Skippy or one of his mates while you're out for a nice nighttime drive. And so in this video, we'll be showing you a dead easy way to install a light bar on almost any car. We'll be doing this as simply as we can without hacking or removing body panels and without having to splice into or rewire your whole car. And best of all, we'll be showing that it doesn't have to be expensive for you to do this at home. Hope you enjoy. Hey there and welcome to Browney's Garage. Today I'll be working on my long-suffering girlfriend Suzuki Swift. It's probably about time I did some work for her on this car, even if she does insist that I'm not allowed to put 4 lights on the front in a rally style pod. She seems to think that that'll only encourage me to take it up into the woods and try and jump it. She's probably right on that. Instead, we'll be mounting this 20-inch LED light bar that we picked up from Super Cheap on special for around $80. We've also purchased this mounting bracket kit that fits on this light bar for a further $20 and just allows us to move those mounting points to wherever we like to make the job easier. I'll provide more details for all the parts we use down below in the description for anyone who's interested, but the way we're going to mount and wire this should work fairly well with most lights and light bars anyway, so it's up to you what you use as far as parts. Which brings us to the first part of fitting this light bar, the mount. There's a wide range of mounting options for your light bar, and of course if you've already got a bull bar or some sort of nudge bar on the front of your car, then you've got the perfect location for it. But what if you don't want to go to the trouble of fitting a bull bar to the front of your car just for your light bar, or you don't want that big hunk of metal hanging off the front? What about using something we all should already have to the front of our car? The number plate. Now, we're not strictly speaking going to use the number plate, of course, but there are at least 2 mounting points normally for each number plate on your car. What if we used those mounting points that you already have? There are all kinds of ready-made options for this available off the shelf, and they generally start from around $50. Or you could whip one up quickly yourself. There's really not much to them. This is a section of 40 by 40 by 3mm angle iron that I've picked up from Bunnings for just $16. That gave me enough to probably do at least 3 of these light bars, but you might even be able to get it cheaper or in a more suitable size from a metal supplier. Once you've got your steel, just cut it to the length you want. I've used an angle grinder for this, but you could use a metal cutting handsaw just as easily. It is just one simple cut. Then get your file and clean up the edges. You're ready then to, using your number plate, use it as a template to mark out the holes there from your number plate into the bumper, and then you can also of course do your holes for your light bar. Now just a quick note, I've positioned these as far back as I can on this bracket so that any weight or movement from that light bar won't have as much leverage on that and won't cause it as much movement or anything like that. Then just a quick lick of paint that I had laying around, some black paint, and it's good to go, it's ready. So for probably under $10 in materials, we've got a light bar that in the shops would cost you $50 or upwards. Not bad. Now that you can mount your light bar, let's move on to the wiring. Here's one I prepared earlier. Wait, don't leave. I know some people will be freaking out. Some people really hate wiring. I promise this is dead simple and anyone can do it. If you are really concerned though, there are kits ready made for this sort of thing that you can buy off the shelf, so there's that option as well. We'll be wiring in this system to come on anytime your high beams come on, so you won't need to put any manual switch in your car or run wiring into the cabin. Should make this job a lot easier. It is legal to do it this way in Victoria, but do make sure you check if you're in another state whether you can do it this way or if you need that manual switch. Alright, let's quickly run through the tools and materials you need to create a wiring loom like this one. Here's what you'll need. You'll need a standard 4 or 5 pin relay. Most are rated to 30 or 40 amps, which should be plenty for most light bars. You'll need an inline fuse holder like this one and a suitable fuse. We're using a 30 amp fuse on this. You'll need some wire crimping and cutting tools. You could probably get away with just using this tool here, but these wire strippers are awesome, so check those out as well if you're going to be doing any wiring work in the future. Highly recommend those. Your crimp connectors, so about 4 female spade connectors. You'll need some butt connectors, and you'll need some ring terminal connectors for connecting wires up to the battery. You'll need, of course, some various bits of wire, some red wire, some black wire, and I've also got some separate coloured wire there for a signal wire. You'll need a test light or a multimeter. This is quite an expensive multimeter. You don't need anything like this. Just a simple unit will do. I think they can be had for as little as about $20. And finally, you'll need one of these wiring adapters that plugs into the back of your headlight. These are awesome. They plug in between the headlight and the normal wiring so that you don't have to cut any of these. It then has this extra wire coming off it to tell your relay when the high beams are on. They come to suit most headlights and go off the size of your globe. So these ones are a H4 wiring adapter. I picked this up on eBay for just $15 and they've got all sorts of different plugs to suit your different headlights. Quickly before we start to wire this, let's go over what a relay actually is. So a relay is simply an electronically controlled switch. Rather than having to push a button or flick a switch every time you want something to happen, this relay can make it happen automatically. They can also be used when you want a low power signal to turn on a much higher power item. To turn this switch on, you need to energize it. That is to have positive power on one pin and negative power at another. On this 5-pin relay and most common 4-pin relays, there'll be pins 85 and 86, which will be labelled on the bottom of your relay. Once connected, that allows the power to flow through the other pins and your switch will essentially be turned on. You'll hear it click when that happens. Okay, let's go over to the wiring and hopefully that'll make more sense shortly. So to do this, we're going to look at each of the paired pins separately. Here's a diagram showing what is on this relay. This is a 5-pin relay, but we'll only be using 4 of those, so ignore the 5th one, which would be in the center here. The pins opposite each other are the paired ones, so 30 and 87 are paired, as well as 85 and 86 are paired. Let's start with the easy ones, pins 30 and 87. So for pin 30, we connect a ring connector to one end of a red power wire, which will go to the positive terminal of the battery, as you can see here. You'll also want to put a fuse in this wire and have it as close to the battery as practical. Then it's just a female spade connector on the other end and onto pin number 30. Ignore this blue jumper wire for now. Then pin 87 is a straight connection to the positive wire from the light bar. While we're here, you'll also have the earth and negative wire coming off the light bar. Connect that up to a ground on the engine or run it back to the negative battery terminal as we will. Pretty straightforward on that one. Pin number 86 will connect to your wire from this awesome headlight adapter that we mentioned earlier. This is a signal wire and it will change automatically when your high beams come on and off. Make sure you connect to the right wire in this adapter, as some come with wires for both the high beam and the low beam. You'll see just how to tell this in a second. Now before we move on to that final pin, there's one more trick with this wiring. I mentioned before that you need a positive and negative on either side of that relay to energize it. And we're using the signal from a high beam light. But did you know that that wire could have positive current running to it even when your high beam isn't turned on? I must admit, I'd overlooked that too, which is why this is the second time I've wired this up. See, there's 2 different ways of turning your headlights and high beams on. The first and most common is called positively switched. Pretty simple, you pull the stalk for your high beams and you send a positive current to that headlight, completing a circuit that's already there, and your headlight or high beam comes on. But there is also negatively switched. That is, there is always power running to that headlight or high beam, but it's when you pull the stalk or turn the switch that the circuit is completed by sending a negative current to complete that. Luckily, this is easy to test, but it will affect our next bit of wiring. Let's go over to the car and take a look. This is where your multimeter will come in. I've got the multimeter set to DC voltage and I've pulled the wiring plug off the back of the headlight. The black wire on our multimeter is connected to the negative post on the battery there, so we've got a good ground. And we can now use the red wire and probe to test for voltage at that headlight plug. Here you can see that even with our headlight or high beam turned off, each of these three plugs for the headlight high beam assembly has 12 volts. This means that the system we have in this car is a negatively switched one. And of course, if there was no or very little voltage, it would be positively switched. You can also use the multimeter while we're here to check which pin on this plug changes voltage when the high beam is turned on, and make sure that your adapter plug is wired correctly. High beam on, high beam off, high beam on, high beam off. So with this now in mind, there are two ways to wire this final pin. If you have negatively switched high beams, like we do, then you will need positive battery power to pin number 85. We've done this using the blue jumper wire you may have noticed earlier from pin 30. Or if you have the more common positively switched high beams, you could connect this to a ground or negative source, such as the negative battery terminal. And with that, your homemade wiring loom is ready. Let's go back to the car, install it all, and fingers crossed, let's hope this works. Mount the relay wherever best suits you. We have this convenient hole, but existing bolts are also great if available. Be sure all wires are run so they're not too close to anything cutty, burny or spinny. So avoid things like sharp edges, exhaust or fans. Okay, testing time. What you can see now is just the headlights. I'm going to jump in and flick on the high beams in a second, and then we'll plug in the light bar as well and we'll show that. Hopefully we don't burn the car to the ground doing this. Let's have a look. High beams. And I'll flick that off. Connect up our light bar. Light bar connected, and let's flick the high beams again. High beams and light bar. Much better, plenty of light there. It is quite level, that light bar. We could perhaps play around with that and get it a little bit better, but I reckon that looks quite good. And there it is, guys. I've scored some brownie points, and for under roughly $150 in materials, we're ready to blind those drivers with their poorly aimed, overly bright headlights. Oh yeah, of course, I mean, look out for wildlife on the road. Thanks for watching, hope you've enjoyed, and if you have, please give us a like and consider subscribing for more coming up. Cheers. High beam on, high beam off. High beam on, high beam off. High beam on, high beam off.